I stayed at a small roadside hotel last summer during a work trip that I hadn't planned very well. It was one of those places you find late at night when you've been driving for hours and your eyes start burning from the headlights of passing cars. The highway signs started blending together, and the thought of sleeping in my car just felt unbearable. I saw a flickering neon sign on the side of the road that said vacancy, nightly stays, low rates, and I pulled in without thinking much. The parking lot was almost empty, just a few older cars parked crookedly under yellow lights that hummed constantly. The hotel was one of those single-level buildings where every room had an exterior door. The paint on the doors was chipped, the windows were foggy with condensation, and the air smelled faintly of mildew mixed with cigarette smoke. I didn't care. I just wanted to sleep. The man at the front desk looked half asleep himself, and the lobby felt like it hadn't been updated since the late 80s. Yellowed wallpaper, faded red carpet, and an old vending machine humming in the corner with only half the buttons working. When I finally got to my room, the air felt thick, like it hadn't been opened in a long time. The carpet was stained near the door, the walls had faint scuff marks, and there was a buzzing sound coming from the bathroom light even when it was turned off. The bedspread looked clean enough, though, and I was too tired to care. I set my bag down, kicked off my shoes, and stretched out on the bed. I left the TV on low volume just to fill the silence. Sometime around midnight, I woke up to a faint sound outside my door. At first, I thought it was someone walking to their car or maybe checking into a nearby room, but it kept going slow, dragging footsteps moving past my door, then stopping. I didn't move. I could hear breathing, not loud, just slow, steady breathing right outside my door. I stared at the thin line of light under the door, waiting to see shadows or movement, but there was nothing. After maybe a full minute, the breathing stopped, and I heard the steps fade away toward the far end of the hallway. I tried to shake it off, telling myself it was just another guest. I went back to sleep eventually, but it wasn't restful. I kept waking up at random times, half dreaming, feeling like I was being watched. Around 3:30 a.m., I heard another noise. It wasn't footsteps this time. It was something softer, like fabric brushing against the door. I got up slowly, my heart pounding, and looked through the peephole. Nothing. The hallway was empty. The dim yellow light at the end of the walkway flickered every few seconds, but no one was there. I went to check the lock just to make sure it was secured, and when I touched the handle, I noticed it was cold. Colder than it should have been. The next morning, I noticed something odd. The doormat outside my door was missing. Every other room had one, even the empty ones. Mine was gone. I thought maybe it got blown away, but there was no wind during the night. I didn't think much of it until I saw faint smudges on the concrete outside, like someone had been standing there barefoot. They led away toward the corner of the building and disappeared into the gravel near the side lot. Later that day, when I came back from a meeting, my keycard didn't work. I went to the front desk, and the guy there told me it wasn't registered in the system anymore. He asked me if I had extended my stay or changed rooms. I said no, and he looked confused but reactivated it. I went back to the room, opened the door, and froze. The bed was made differently than how I had left it. The corners were tucked in tightly, the pillows arranged in a different order, and my bag had been moved from the chair to the corner of the floor. The TV remote was on the other side of the nightstand. Nothing was missing, but everything felt slightly off, like someone had been inside for a while and tried to put everything back exactly how it was. That night, I couldn't sleep. I turned off the TV, sat in the chair, and just listened. Around 2 a.m., I heard soft scratching sounds from the bathroom. I got up and checked the floor, thinking maybe it was a mouse or something small moving around, but it stopped as soon as I stepped inside. The mirror had small water streaks running down it, fresh ones. The sink was damp like it had just been used. The air smelled faintly like soap. Not the cheap hotel bar soap, but something floral, something I hadn't brought. I decided to sleep with the lights on. I turned the bathroom light off but left the main one near the bed on. The next thing I remember is waking up to complete darkness. The lights were off. I reached for the switch, but it didn't work. My stomach sank. I checked my phone, it was dead, even though I had left it charging. The outlet was loose when I touched it, like it had been pulled halfway out of the wall. That's when I heard it again, breathing. This time it wasn't outside. It was inside the room, faint but close, slow and steady like before. My body locked up completely. I couldn't see anything, but I could feel that I wasn't alone. I slowly reached toward the nightstand for the flashlight I kept in my bag, but I couldn't find it. The breathing stopped suddenly. I sat there in the dark, waiting, my ears straining for any sound. Then the bathroom light flickered on by itself, just for a second. But in that flash, I saw movement. A shadow near the curtain, then nothing. I didn't think. I grabbed my bag, yanked the door open, and ran out barefoot into the parking lot. I didn't look back. I just kept running until I reached my car. I sat there for a while, shaking, staring at the door of the room from the driver's seat. After a few minutes, the light inside turned on again. The curtain moved slightly, like someone was looking out. That was enough. I drove away without even checking out. The next morning, after I'd driven several towns away, I stopped at a diner for breakfast. I sat there staring at my coffee, trying to convince myself I'd imagined it all. I opened my bag to grab my charger, and that's when I noticed something that made my blood run cold. Inside one of the side pockets was the missing doormat from outside my hotel door, rolled up and folded neatly. I hadn't touched it. I hadn't even gone outside that side of the room. The bottom of the mat was still damp, and there were faint footprints pressed into it, small and uneven, like someone had been standing there for a long time before picking it up. I threw it out in the trash outside the diner, but I couldn't shake the feeling that someone had been watching me the entire time I was at that hotel. Later that week, out of curiosity, I looked up the place online. There were almost no reviews, but the few that existed mentioned strange things. Doors unlocking on their own, belongings being moved, lights turning off in the middle of the night. One reviewer mentioned waking up to find wet footprints leading from the bathroom to the bed. I still don't know what happened there. Maybe it was someone living in the walls, or a staff member sneaking into rooms, or something else I'll never understand. But ever since that night, I haven't been able to stay in small hotels again. I'd rather sleep in my car now than ever wake up in a room like that again, wondering who or what was breathing just a few feet away in the dark. I checked into the hotel late in the evening after a full day of driving. It was a small place, tucked behind a gas station off a quiet stretch of road that didn't seem to lead anywhere important. The sign outside said Valley Rest Lodge, but the letters were faded and a few were missing. The paint on the walls was chipped, the parking lot lights flickered weakly, and there were no other cars around except mine and an old pickup near the far end. I didn't care what it looked like. I just wanted a bed and a shower. The air inside smelled like old carpet and something faintly chemical, like bleach that hadn't quite done its job. The front counter was scratched and dusty, and behind it was a small office with boxes stacked everywhere. The man who handed me my room key barely looked up from what he was doing. He gave me a paper form to sign, slid the key across, and pointed to the direction of the hallway. I took it, too tired to care about anything else. My room was on the first floor, room 107. The hallway was long and narrow, with carpet that had been trampled flat over years. The light fixtures hummed quietly, some of them flickering every few seconds. It gave the whole hallway a strange pulsing feeling, like the place was breathing. The air was warm and still, almost too quiet. When I unlocked the door, the first thing I noticed was how cold the room was compared to the hallway. The air felt heavy and damp, like the AC had been running nonstop. There was a faint smell of mildew mixed with some kind of strong cleaner. I turned on the lamp near the bed and looked around. It was a small room, one bed, one nightstand, an old TV on a dresser, and a little table near the window. The curtains were drawn shut, but a faint orange light from the parking lot leaked through a gap near the bottom. The bed looked okay, though the blanket was thin and had a few stains near the edges. The carpet had dark spots in random places, and the walls were slightly discolored near the floor. I tried not to think too much about it. I had stayed in worse places before. I dropped my bag near the bed, kicked off my shoes, and sat down. The mattress sagged slightly, but after 10 hours of driving, it felt like heaven. After resting for a bit, I got up to wash my face. The bathroom was small, with yellowish tiles and a sink that was cracked near the drain. The mirror was spotted with water stains. When I turned on the faucet, the water came out brown for a few seconds before clearing up. The sound echoed strangely in the small space. I washed my face anyway, trying not to look too long at the mirror because something about the lighting made my reflection look sickly pale. When I came back out, I sat at the table near the window and pulled out my phone. I had no signal, not even one bar. I tried the hotel's Wi-Fi, but it didn't work either. Just unable to connect. I sighed, figuring it didn't matter. I'd leave early in the morning anyway. At around midnight, I turned off the lights and tried to sleep. The hum from the AC was the only sound. I was almost asleep when I heard a faint thud. Came from somewhere above me. A slow, dull impact, then silence. Then another one, like someone dropping something heavy onto the floor. I opened my eyes and stared at the ceiling. I told myself it was probably another guest. The place looked old. Maybe the floors creaked easily. But the noises continued. Slow, spaced out, deliberate. Like someone walking, then stopping, then walking again. I listened carefully, and it didn't sound like footsteps exactly. It sounded more like something being dragged. A soft scraping sound, then a pause, then another. I lay there perfectly still, trying to figure out if it was coming from above or the hallway. After a while, it stopped. I waited for a few minutes, and when nothing else happened, I finally started to relax again. But right when I was about to fall asleep, there was a noise from the other side of my wall. A faint thump, then something that sounded like breathing. It wasn't loud, but it was close. Too close. It sounded like someone standing right behind the wall near the head of the bed. I froze. I didn't know if the walls were just that thin or if there was a vent connecting the rooms. The breathing went on for maybe 30 seconds, soft and uneven, like whoever it was trying to stay quiet. Then it stopped suddenly. I sat there in the dark, barely breathing myself. I turned my head toward the wall slowly, trying to listen for anything else. The silence was absolute. The air in the room felt heavier now, and I could feel my own heartbeat thudding in my ears. I thought about turning on the light, but something inside me told me to stay still. After a few more minutes, I reached for my phone again, but the screen stayed black, dead battery. That's when I realized how cut off I was. No phone, no signal, no one awake to call for help even if I had one. I tried to calm myself down. Old buildings made noises. Maybe it was the plumbing or some kind of animal in the walls. I was just tired and thinking too much. Eventually, I must have drifted off because the next thing I remember was waking up suddenly in the dark again. It was still night, but something had woken me. I could hear faint movement, a soft shuffle somewhere near the door. My heart jumped. I slowly turned my head toward it. The light from the parking lot barely reached that part of the room, but I could see the faint outline of the door and the bottom edge where a sliver of dim light showed from the hallway outside. That sliver was broken. There was a shadow there, something blocking the light. It wasn't moving, just standing there on the other side of the door. I couldn't see details, but I could tell it was the shape of someone standing still, close enough that their feet were casting the shadow across the floor. I stayed completely still, gripping the blanket tightly. I waited, barely breathing, staring at that shadow. It didn't move for a long time. Then the doorknob started to turn slowly. I heard the faint metal click as it shifted. The door didn't open, but the handle turned halfway and then stopped. Whoever was out there was trying quietly, testing it. I felt this cold wave go through me. My room key was still on the nightstand, the only key I had. That meant whoever was there either had another one or was hoping I'd forgotten to lock it. I reached out slowly and felt for the lock, careful not to make noise. It was still latched. Thank God. I kept my hand there, holding the metal latch in place, just in case. The knob turned again, a little more forcefully this time. I could hear breathing now, soft, steady, patient. They knew someone was inside. After maybe a full minute, the knob released. The shadow stayed there for a few more seconds, then slowly moved away. The sliver of light came back under the door. I stayed awake until morning, sitting upright in bed, staring at the door. I didn't even dare move until the sun started to come up through the blinds. When I finally opened the door to leave, the hallway was empty, but something was different. There were muddy footprints on the carpet, faint but visible. They stopped right in front of my door, then turned around and led back toward the exit. I followed them with my eyes and saw they came from the stairwell that led up to the second floor. I went back inside to grab my bag, and when I turned to close the door, I noticed something scratched into the wood just below the knob. Tiny, uneven marks, 4 of them like fingernail scratches. They hadn't been there when I checked in. I left the hotel as fast as I could. I didn't even stop by the front desk. When I got outside, I saw that the old pickup truck parked at the far end of the lot was still there. But now the driver's side door was open. No one was around. The inside looked messy, with fast food wrappers and a jacket tossed across the seat. As I got into my car, I looked up at the row of windows on the second floor. One of them had the curtain pulled back slightly, just enough to see a dark shape standing there, still and unmoving. I started the engine and pulled out of the lot without looking back. Later that day, at a gas station about 50 miles away, I looked up Valley Rest Lodge out of curiosity. The first result was a short local article from about 6 months earlier. It mentioned that a man had gone missing after staying there overnight. He checked in but never checked out. The police had found his belongings still in the room, but the bed looked like it had never been used. They had found footprints too, muddy ones, leading from the stairwell to the room door and then back again. I didn't finish reading the rest of the article. I just locked my phone screen and sat there for a while, thinking about the scratches, the breathing, and that shadow that stood outside my door for what felt like forever. It wasn't a ghost story or something supernatural. It was just a person. Someone who knew the hallways, someone who had access, someone who waited until it was dark enough to try each door, one by one, hoping one wouldn't be locked. Ever since that night, I can't sleep in hotels without checking the door 3 times. I checked the frame, the latch, even the scratches near the knob. Because now I know those marks aren't from wear and tear. They're from people who were too close, trying to find a way in while you're asleep, thinking no one's listening. I checked into a small hotel off the interstate one night last winter after driving for almost 12 hours straight. It was one of those long, draining days where everything just blends together. Highway signs, gas stations, dark stretches of road. My eyes were sore from the headlights, and my back ached from sitting too long. I didn't plan on staying at that hotel. It just happened to be the only one with a vacancy sign glowing through the fog. The building looked old, the kind of place that used to be nice decades ago but had slowly been forgotten. The lights above the sign flickered, and the parking lot was nearly empty except for a few cars with out-of-state plates. The moment I stepped out of my car, I noticed how quiet it was. No sound of traffic, no wind, just a faint hum from the lights and a distant dripping somewhere near the side of the building. The cold air smelled faintly of damp concrete and old paint. The lobby was small and dimly lit, with stained carpet and walls that looked yellowed from years of cigarette smoke. I could hear an old refrigerator humming behind the desk. Everything felt a little off, but I told myself it was just exhaustion. The room I got was at the far end of the hallway on the second floor. I took the stairs because the elevator didn't look safe. Its doors were dented and the inspection certificate was faded almost beyond reading. The carpet on the second floor was thinner, worn down in a path down the middle, and it smelled faintly of mildew mixed with some kind of cleaning solution that didn't quite cover it up. I passed by a few closed doors, all identical, each with a faded gold number plate slightly crooked. When I unlocked my room, the door stuck a bit like it had swollen from moisture. The air inside hit me immediately. That stale, heavy hotel smell that sits somewhere between old fabric and leftover cigarette smoke. The bedspread had that shiny synthetic texture, patterned with geometric shapes that looked like they belonged in another decade. There was a single lamp by the bed, a small table, a TV bolted to the wall, and a narrow window facing the parking lot. The bathroom door creaked when I opened it, and the light flickered for a few seconds before staying on. I dropped my bag on the floor, kicked off my shoes, and sat down on the edge of the bed. The mattress dipped unevenly like someone had been sleeping on one side for years. I turned on the TV just for some background noise, flipped through static-filled channels until I found a local one playing old reruns and lay down. For a while, everything felt fine. Just another cheap room to crash in. But around midnight, I woke up suddenly. I didn't know why. The TV was still on, low volume, casting flickering light across the room. I had that strange feeling of being pulled out of a deep sleep too quickly, like something had nudged me awake. The first thing I noticed was that the air felt different, colder, heavier somehow. Then I heard it, a soft, rhythmic creaking sound coming from the ceiling. It was slow, like someone walking carefully on the floor above me, back and forth, back and forth. I sat up, rubbed my eyes, and looked around. The sound kept going, steady, almost too deliberate to ignore. I figured someone else was staying upstairs, maybe pacing or moving around. But then I remembered the guy at the front desk had said the top floor was closed for maintenance. I hadn't thought much of it at the time, but now that stuck in my head. I got up and pressed my ear to the ceiling. The sound was still there, faint but clear footsteps, slow and heavy. Sometimes it stopped for a few seconds, then started again. I stood there listening for what felt like minutes. Then, just as I was about to step away, I heard something else. A short, dull thud, like something heavy being set down directly above me. I tried to ignore it. I turned up the TV a little and got back into bed, pulling the blanket up tight, but I couldn't shake that feeling. Every few minutes, I'd hear it again. Faint movement, sometimes a dragging sound, sometimes what sounded like a creak of metal. It went on for hours, stopping and starting without any pattern. I told myself it had to be pipes, or maybe something shifting in the structure. I must have fallen asleep again sometime after 3 a.m., because when I opened my eyes next, it was early morning. The light outside the window was gray and dim, the kind that makes everything look colder. I got up, stretched, and went into the bathroom. That's when I noticed something strange. There was a wet footprint on the tile floor just inside the doorway. Not mine, it was smaller, bare, and faintly outlined in dirt. My feet were dry, and the shower hadn't been used yet. I stared at it for a while, trying to figure out if I'd stepped in something the night before without noticing, but it didn't make sense. The floor around it was dry. The rest of the day was uneventful. I left early for my meeting, came back in the evening, and grabbed some food from a diner down the road. When I returned to my room, I noticed something that made my stomach tighten. The window was unlocked. I was sure I hadn't touched it. I checked everything else in the room. Nothing seemed missing, but the blanket on the bed looked slightly different, pulled unevenly like someone had sat on it. That night, I decided to stay awake for a while, just to see if I could hear anything again. I turned off the TV, left the lamp on, and lay on the bed staring at the ceiling. For the first hour, it was silent except for the occasional creak of the building settling. Around 1 a.m., the noise started again. Slow footsteps above me, steady and deliberate. I stayed still, listening closely. Then, faintly, I heard what sounded like the scraping of wood. Something was definitely moving up there. The ceiling above the bathroom made a soft cracking sound, and dust drifted down into the sink. That's when I realized what was happening. Someone was up there, in the crawl space between floors. My whole body went cold. I stared at that spot above the bathroom for a long time, barely breathing. The scraping continued for several minutes, then stopped suddenly. I didn't sleep at all that night. As soon as the sky started turning light, I packed my stuff and went downstairs. The guy at the front desk barely looked up when I dropped off the key. I wanted to say something, ask if there was maintenance work happening upstairs, but I didn't. I just left. A few days later, curiosity got the better of me. I looked up the hotel online. There wasn't much information, but one post on a local forum caught my attention. Someone mentioned staying there a few months earlier and hearing footsteps in the ceiling too. They said they'd reported it, and when maintenance checked, they found signs that someone had been living in the crawl space. Food wrappers, a sleeping bag, old water bottles. Reading that made my stomach twist. All the noises, the footprint, the unlocked window, it all made sense. Someone had been sneaking in and out of rooms through the crawl space, probably when guests were out or asleep. I thought back to that first night, the breathing I thought I heard, the wet footprint, the feeling that something had woken me up. That person must have been in my room, maybe watching, maybe looking for something to steal. I'll never know exactly what they were doing, but the thought of it still makes my skin crawl. Ever since then, I can't sleep easily in hotels. I check the vents, the closets, under the bed, even behind the bathroom mirror if it's loose. I double lock every door and wedge something under the handle. It's not paranoia, it's just knowing that sometimes the things that scare you most aren't ghosts or monsters. They're real people hiding in the dark, waiting until you're asleep. I had been driving for hours when I finally pulled off the highway and found a small roadside hotel sitting alone beside a stretch of empty road. The sign said Ridgeview Inn, but half the letters were burned out. It was already dark, and I was too tired to keep driving. My back hurt, my eyes were dry, and I just wanted a bed. The parking lot had maybe 5 cars scattered around, but most of the place looked empty. The building was old, 2 floors, long and stretched out, with lights flickering in some of the windows. Inside, the air smelled like damp carpet and cheap cleaning spray. The floor creaked under my boots as I walked to the counter. The guy at the front desk barely looked up, gave me a room key, and slid a form across the counter. I signed it, took the key, and went back outside to get my bag. The night air was heavy and still, the only sound being a buzzing streetlight near the end of the lot. My room was on the 2nd floor, all the way at the end of the hallway. The walk up the stairs felt strange. Each step made this deep hollow thump, and the railing was loose like it might come off the wall. The hallway smelled like old smoke and mildew. The wallpaper was peeling at the seams, showing a darker layer underneath. The whole place gave me this uneasy feeling, but I told myself I was just tired and thinking too much. When I unlocked the door, it took a couple of pushes to get it open. The room was small, 1 bed, a dusty old TV on a dresser, a small table with a single chair, and a bathroom door half open. The air was warm and musty, like the air hadn't moved in days. I flicked on the AC unit under the window, but it only made a loud grinding noise and started spitting out a weak puff of air that smelled like old dust. I dropped my bag on the floor and sat on the edge of the bed. The mattress sagged in the middle, and the blanket felt rough, like it hadn't been washed in a long time. The clock on the nightstand blinked, 12 o'clock, over and over. I checked my phone, no signal, not even a single bar. That annoyed me a bit because I was planning to check directions for the next day. I sat there for a while, scrolling through my photos that wouldn't load properly, until I started hearing this faint noise. It sounded like water running somewhere, maybe a faucet or shower. At first, I thought it was the room next door, but it went on and off like someone was twisting the knob, stopping, and turning it back again. It went quiet for a bit. Then I heard what sounded like a door creaking open and then slamming shut. The walls were thin, so I figured someone just checked into the room beside mine. I got up, went to wash my face, and when I turned on the bathroom light, I noticed something strange. The mirror had a long, greasy handprint near the bottom, like someone had leaned on it with dirty fingers. I wiped at it with a towel, but the smudge didn't come off. There were also water stains all around the sink, like someone had splashed everywhere and didn't bother wiping it down. The more I looked, the more it felt like this room hadn't been properly cleaned. The shower curtain was stained yellow near the bottom, and there were little hairs on the edge of the tub. I went back to the bed, kicked off my shoes, and laid down. I stared at the ceiling for a while, just trying to rest, but the sound started again. Faint thumps, like footsteps above me. They moved slowly from one side of the room to the other. Then silence. Then again. I sat up and listened carefully. It didn't sound like someone walking normally. It was uneven, like one slow drag, then a step. Over and over. After a few minutes, it stopped. I told myself the building was just old. Maybe pipes, maybe wood expanding. I turned off the light and tried to sleep. But sometime later, I woke up suddenly. I didn't know why at first. The room was dark except for the faint glow from the parking lot light leaking through the blinds. My heart was beating fast, and my body felt tense, like I had been startled out of a bad dream. Then I heard it, a sound from the hallway, soft at first like a shoe sliding against the carpet. Then another, slow, steady steps moving past my door. The footsteps stopped right outside. I could hear the floor creak directly in front of my room. Whoever it was just stood there. I held my breath. The silence felt so heavy that I could hear the AC's weak hum in the corner of the room. Then I heard a soft tap. The sound of metal hitting wood came from the doorknob. Someone was slowly trying to turn it. I froze. My hand reached for my phone, but there was still no signal. The knob turned slightly again, then stopped. The person didn't knock or say anything. They just stood there. I could hear breathing, faint but definitely there. After maybe a full minute, the sound faded away. The footsteps moved down the hall again, slow and dragging, until they were gone. I didn't move for a long time. When I finally did, I checked the door. The latch was still locked, but I noticed a thin scratch near the knob, like someone had tried to pry it before. It wasn't fresh, but it was deep. I didn't sleep much after that. Every little noise made me jump. The AC clanked, the pipes hissed, and I just lay there staring at the door until the light started coming through the blinds. When the sun finally rose, I felt exhausted, but also weirdly relieved that I'd made it through the night. I got up, packed my stuff fast, and went to take a shower before leaving. When I stepped inside the bathroom again, I noticed something that stopped me cold. The mirror that had that greasy handprint now had something else below it. There were fresh streaks of water running down the glass, vertical lines still wet, like someone had run their fingers down it. I hadn't used the sink since the night before. That was enough for me. I skipped the shower, grabbed my bag, and left the room. The hallway felt colder than before, and as I walked toward the stairs, I saw that one of the other doors near the end of the hall was cracked open just a few inches. I could see darkness inside. For a second, I thought I saw movement, a shadow shifting slightly, but I didn't wait to check. I just kept walking. Downstairs, the lobby was empty. The front desk guy wasn't there, and the lights above the counter flickered. I left the key on the desk and went out to my car. When I opened the door, I noticed something on my windshield. It was a small paper slip folded in half. I opened it, expecting maybe a receipt or parking warning, but it was blank, completely empty. Just a small piece of paper that looked like it had been torn out of a notepad. As I drove away, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone had been in my room that night. Maybe the lock was weak, maybe someone had a copy of the key. I kept thinking about the noises, the dragging footsteps, the breathing, the knob turning slowly. It all felt too specific to be my imagination. About an hour later, I stopped at a gas station down the road. When I went inside to grab a drink, I saw a bulletin board near the register with old flyers pinned on it. One of them caught my eye. It was a missing person notice, a man around his late 30s with tired eyes and short hair. Underneath the photo it said he was last seen at Ridgeview in 3 weeks ago, the same hotel I'd just left. I stared at the photo for a long time. The description said he'd checked in alone, and the staff had no record of him checking out. His car was still found in the parking lot days later. I felt sick reading it. When I went back out to my car, I couldn't stop thinking about the open door at the end of the hallway, about the scratches on my doorknob, about the wet streaks on the mirror that weren't there before. Maybe whoever was walking that hall at night wasn't a ghost, wasn't something supernatural, just someone who never really left. Someone who had a key, someone who waited until people fell asleep. I didn't call the police. I didn't even tell anyone. I just kept driving until I reached the next city, booked another hotel, and made sure the door had a metal latch and a deadbolt that actually clicked tight. But even then, every sound that night made me jolt awake. Every creak, every hiss of air. And now, even months later, when I stay in a hotel, I can't help checking the mirrors for prints or the doorknobs for scratches. Because somewhere out there, maybe at another old hotel on some forgotten highway, someone is still walking those halls, trying each handle slowly, one by one, waiting for the next door that opens. I had been on the road for nearly 12 hours when I finally decided to stop for the night. It was already past 10 p.m., and I was somewhere deep in a part of the state I didn't know well. I pulled off the main highway and found a small hotel sitting just off the exit ramp. The sign outside was half lit, buzzing faintly, and read Hillcrest Motor Lodge. The building looked old, maybe built in the 70s, and the paint was peeling off the siding. But I was too tired to care. I just wanted a bed, a shower, and a few hours of quiet sleep before continuing my drive in the morning. The parking lot had about 6 cars, all spread far apart. The air was humid and heavy, and the only sounds were the faint hum of insects and the low, distant drone of trucks on the highway. I parked near the office and went inside. The lobby smelled faintly of cigarette smoke covered up by cheap air freshener. The carpet was worn flat, and the furniture looked like it hadn't been moved in decades. I checked in, paid for the room, and got my key. The guy at the counter barely spoke, just pointed down the hallway to the right. My room was number 112, near the end of the first floor. The hallway leading there was narrow, dimly lit, and smelled like damp carpet. The lights above me buzzed softly, and one of them flickered every few seconds, throwing the walls into short bursts of shadow. I could feel the air get heavier as I walked further down, like it hadn't been ventilated properly in a long time. The door to my room opened with a sticky click, and the smell hit me immediately. Stale air mixed with something faintly metallic, like rust or old pipes. I stepped inside and shut the door behind me. The room was small and plain. One bed in the center, a nightstand with a lamp, a heavy dresser with an old box-style TV on top, a chair by the window, and a door to the bathroom on the left. The carpet was a dull brown color, matted down in places, and the wallpaper had small bubbles under it from moisture. The air conditioner in the window rattled loudly but didn't seem to blow much air. I turned it off, deciding I'd rather deal with the heat than that constant noise. The sheets looked clean enough, though the blanket had a small tear near the corner. The window was covered with thick curtains that didn't quite close all the way, and a sliver of the parking lot light came through, cutting across the bed. I set my bag down, washed my face, and sat on the bed for a minute. My legs felt heavy from driving all day. I checked my phone, but the signal was weak. One bar that disappeared every few seconds. No Wi-Fi either. I figured it didn't matter. I'd sleep and leave early in the morning. For a while, it was peaceful. I lay down and just listened to the faint hum of the building, the low sound of the refrigerator in the hallway, the occasional pop from the pipes. But after maybe half an hour, I started noticing something faint. It was a noise, somewhere in the background, soft and irregular. At first, I thought it was the air conditioner from another room. But when I listened closer, it sounded more like something tapping, uneven and slow. Top, top, top. It was coming from the wall behind the bed. I sat up slightly, trying to figure out if it was the pipes again or something else. The sound would come for a few seconds, then stop, then start again. Always 3 or 4 slow taps, then silence. After a few minutes, it stopped completely. I lay back down, a little uneasy but trying not to think too much of it. Old hotels make weird noises all the time. That's what I told myself. I must have drifted off for a bit because the next thing I remember is waking up to another sound. This time it was different. It was softer, like fabric brushing against fabric. A slow, sliding sound. I stayed still, eyes open, listening carefully. It was coming from near the door. My heartbeat picked up a little. I glanced over. The room was dark except for that sliver of orange light from the parking lot sneaking through the curtains. Everything looked normal. The door was still shut, locked from the inside. Then the sound came again, this time from closer to the foot of the bed. It was so quiet I almost thought I was imagining it, like the faintest shuffle of someone's clothing. My first thought was that maybe it was a mouse or something in the walls, but the noise didn't sound like that. It was slow, deliberate, like something moving carefully across the carpet. I sat up a little more, my eyes trying to adjust to the dark. The air felt still and heavy. I reached over to the nightstand for my phone to use the flashlight, but it wasn't there. I had left it charging on the dresser by the TV. That meant I'd have to get up to grab it. For a long moment, I just sat there, staring into the dim shape of the room, listening. Nothing, just silence again. I finally worked up the nerve, swung my legs over the edge of the bed, and stood up. My feet pressed into the thin carpet, and it felt slightly damp. The air conditioner was off, but the room still had this faint hum. Not mechanical, but low and distant, like the kind of sound you hear when you're deep inside an old building. I made my way toward the dresser, keeping one hand along the wall. I could barely see anything except the dull outline of the TV. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight. The beam cut through the dark, sharp and cold. The room looked the same as before: bed, chair, bathroom door half open. Nothing looked out of place. I turned the light toward the window. The curtains were still closed, but something about them looked off. The bottom edge was pushed inward slightly, like the fabric had been moved. I walked closer and saw that one of the curtain hooks was pulled loose. I moved the curtain aside just a bit to check the glass. That's when I noticed it. A faint smudge near the bottom of the window. It looked like a handprint. Small, maybe from someone pressing their palm against the glass. The outside was pitch black, so I couldn't see anything beyond my own reflection. But the print was on the inside. I stepped back quickly, my heart pounding. I stared at it, trying to think of a logical reason. Maybe I'd missed it when I came in. Maybe housekeeping had touched it earlier. But the print looked fresh, like someone had pressed it there recently. I turned off the flashlight and went back to the bed. I sat there, too alert to sleep now, every small sound in the building making me jump. Hours seemed to crawl by. At some point, I must have dozed off again because I woke up to the faintest sound of metal scraping. It was coming from the door this time. A slow, gentle rattle like someone trying the handle, not turning it fully, just testing it. My eyes went wide in the dark. I could see the faint outline of the door from where I sat, that same thin strip of orange light glowing under it. And just like before, it was broken. Something was blocking part of the light. Someone was standing right outside. The handle moved again, just slightly, then stopped. The silence stretched on for what felt like forever. I could hear the faint sound of breathing, steady, slow, controlled. They were waiting. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe loudly. After a long minute, the shadow shifted. The light under the door returned to normal. Whoever it was had walked away. I stayed awake until morning, sitting upright, my back pressed against the headboard, staring at the door. When daylight finally came through the window, I grabbed my things, checked the hallway through the peephole, and stepped out quickly. The hallway was empty. The air was still thick, and the carpet was darker in some spots, like it had been dampened overnight. I walked fast toward the exit, passing a few other doors. All closed, all silent. When I reached the front, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. The door to the stairwell, right next to the lobby, was wedged open with a folded piece of paper. It was a small notepad sheet like the kind they leave on hotel desks. I glanced at it as I passed. There were faint marks on it. Not words, just small lines, drawn over and over in the same spot until they dug through the paper. I went outside, the morning sun already burning through the haze, and walked straight to my car. When I unlocked it, I noticed the back seatbelt was buckled. I never buckle it. That was when it hit me. The soft sounds during the night, the print on the window, the faint shuffle on the carpet. Whoever was outside my door might not have come for the first time then. They could have been inside before I even checked in, waiting, watching quietly, slipping out before sunrise. I didn't go back to complain. I didn't tell anyone. I just drove. For hours. Even now, when I stay in hotels, I check everything. Under the bed, behind the curtains, even inside the bathroom ceiling vent. Because that night taught me something real. Sometimes the scariest thing about a hotel isn't the room itself, but knowing that while you're asleep in a place that isn't yours, someone else might already be inside, moving quietly, waiting for you to stop noticing the sounds.